Now my sister, brother, you be the mugu, I be the master. Oh, you man, I go chop your dollar. I go take your money, disappear. 419 is just a game. You are the loser, I am the winner. The refinery, now me get down. The contract, now you I go give up.
58 of the Bono's podcast. This is Brian Bullock, and you got plastic trains on behind you there. And with me on this pod, a new guest. Some of you guys might know him as Mugu. Grover, I think. I think I've heard that one. But the actual you could catch him on Twitter, is at Groovin Mahoovin. Am I pronouncing that right?
That's right.
Okay.
Don't forget boozing and losing. That's another one of mine.
Boozing and losing. All right. So at Groovin Mahoovin. I don't know what to call you during this podcast for short, but so just call.
Yeah, Groovin works. That's fine.
Groovin, all right. So Groovin, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining.
Hi, Brain.
Brain, yeah. I appreciate that. It's a flattering nickname, I guess. I guess it could be worse, but welcome to the pod. And as I do with any new guest, I figured I would give you a chance to introduce yourself because I actually just met you a couple of months ago, I think, when I started following Seville, #Seville on Twitter, and saw some of your you're pretty not outgoing. You're not really
No, I'm very shy.
You're very shy on Twitter, but for those that don't know you, or even for those who do, introduce yourself from a gambling perspective. Get your gambling roots, when you started, what you bet, any memorable betting moments, however you care to introduce yourself from a betting perspective. So feel free to take it away.
Sure. I've been posting at gambling forums, I guess, for close to 20 years. I started with poker. There was, in the mid-'90s, there was a Usenet group called Rec Gambling Poker that had some really interesting and intelligent poker players. I learned a lot from there. And the sports betting equivalent, Rec Gambling Sports, was awful. There was no one that really knew what they were talking about. But I always had an academic interest in sports. And then eventually I found a website, sharpsportsbetting.com, which was run by Stanford Wong, who wrote a book called Sharp Sports Betting, who people might know from Blackjack, Video Poker, and that sports betting book. And it was actually a tout site. They did sell picks, but they also had some great conversation there. And a lot of people seem to think that, oh, why do you hate touts so much? You must have had an awful experience with touts. It's actually the opposite. I actually won money betting those picks, and I learned a lot from some of the people that sold picks and also some of the regular posters. But what they did there, they did everything the right way. You can still go to that site. It hasn't been working it's been defunct for about 5 years. Edward from RAS bought it, and the message boards are still there, but they're not using it really for much. But yeah, you can still see all the records. They kept accurate records. They graded the picks versus legitimately widely available lines. So yeah, I don't object to the idea of selling picks. A lot of people think I do. I object to the false promotion. So I met a lot of interesting, intelligent people there, learned a lot about sports betting, ended up on Fezzik's message board, which was also a good board at the time. And that's where I learned a lot about betting. Now, in terms of my ersatz role as a industry watchdog, for lack of a better word, on those forums, once in a while, the name of a tout from somewhere would come up, and if they were obviously not very knowledgeable, plenty of the posters would call them out. It wasn't like I was needing to do that. But I learned more about the touting industry, and I guess Fezzik is probably the easiest example I can give of someone, because when he sold picks on that Sharp Sports Betting site and then on his own site a little later, he did everything the right way, and he called out the frauds and he advertised real records. But then eventually he stopped winning. And after he won the Hilton contest twice, he was selling picks on Las Vegas Advisor, and he got utterly destroyed. He lost in a 5-year period. It was 2005 before he won the Hilton, and then the next 4 seasons, he lost something like 210 units with an average bet of 2 units. I mean, he got killed. And obviously no one on LVA wanted to buy his picks anymore, so he left and went to pregame, and all of a sudden is acting like the LVA records don't count. And when people on pregame asked, oh, does Fezzik have any past records? Johnny Detroit from pregame said, oh, no, he's a pro bettor. He's never sold picks before. He finally thinks someone's selling picks the right way. So I signed up. I said, he does have past records. Here they are. And they immediately deleted my post and banned me. So, and then, so, hey, I've had a Twitter account for years. I was never a big fan of the 140 character limit, but if they're going to keep advertising all this false nonsense, I'm going to call them out. And my biggest objection isn't, again, it's not the selling, but if someone who was in my shoes almost 20 years ago, learning poker and then learning sports betting, wants to actually talk to someone knowledgeable, they're censoring the content. So, and then acting like, oh, we're the most transparent site in the business. No, you're not. Anyone that tries to keep accurate records, you're going to ban. Anyone that points out they use the bogus line, you're going to ban them.
Yeah, that seems to be the buzzword that people use.
Right. Transparent.
Like that's
that's a different definition of transparency than a normal person would have. Transparency would be, uncensored. That Sharp Sports Betting site, the site, if you were really out of line and got personal, they might delete a post. But for the most part, you can be critical. The easiest example I can give is they had a guy selling picks there named Yash, who was having a bad year at college football, and then one weekend he gave out in college football 43 picks. He posted all at once, 43 sides and totals, which is, that's betting, almost half the games.
Sure.
And people were like, wait, how can he possibly have an edge betting this many games all at once? And they did poorly. I think those picks went like 18 and 25 or something, and then he promptly resigned from the site. But, they didn't hide anything. They said, well, okay, I guess it was a mistake for this to happen. His records are still on that site, 12 years later. And they didn't sugarcoat anything. So that was how a legitimately transparent site would be.
Sure. And I assume that that's a rare thing. I don't go out of my way too often to seek these things out because I obviously have no intention of ever buying picks ever. I've never bought picks, so there's people like you that I appreciate that you will actually call these people out. And you do this for a living. So is there what incentive do you have for somebody that does this for a living to call people like this out? Because I would assume that keeping frauds like this in business might help you in some way, but maybe I'm misreading.
Oh no, you're exactly right. I get this question all the time. Like, well, these touts that are selling this bad info. Anytime that Square money goes into the betting pools, I profit. So from that perspective, that could definitely be right, that I should be encouraging these touts. But first of all, no matter what I say, I'm only a drop in the bucket. They will still always have an audience of people buying this crap. So I don't think I'm really hurting my bottom line that much. But there's also an argument that perhaps the money that people are paying them is money that they're taking out of betting pools because these people mostly don't bet. Talking about the fraud touts, there are some legitimate touts out there. But the frauds, they're not betting. So there's an argument to be made that the money that people are paying for the tout pick might not be, they might have otherwise bet that. So, but there's certainly, I wouldn't argue with someone who thinks that I'd be better off just keeping my mouth shut and letting these idiots do what they do. But I just think in general, the scumminess of this tends to make the general industry look bad, gambling in the whole.
Sure.
The most obvious example I can give is that almost all these touts will like to talk about how there are all these fixed games out there. Like Fezzik, who should really know better. There was a game a while back where he gave out this opposite side of Right Angle Sports, who were one of the better college football handicappers out there. Fezzik took the opposite side, and his bet lost badly. The team didn't even show up in the second half. So he's on pregame mumbling about how, I heard some rumors, that game was fixed. Like, the more that people think, one of the buzzwords that a lot of people that are opposed to legalized sports betting will say is, legalized sports betting will promote gambling fixes. So from my perspective, I profit from legalized sports betting. If in Vegas and if it existed elsewhere.
Sure.
So from that angle, the touts do make it worse. But, I mean, all the get-rich-quick nonsense, like a lot of these guys advertise fake records and how, Philly Godfather has supposedly made $100,000 for $100 better in the last 30 months. And Todd Furman's pal, Pain Insider, made 1,400 units in the last, this get-rich-quick crap. People will see that, and a lot of them might see through that. It doesn't make things look good in general.
Sure. So since when you first started, at least from your initial experiences, you didn't really have that negative of an impression of the tout industry, kind of like you do now. Do you feel like it's gotten worse, or maybe you're just more cognizant of it?
I would say the difference is that ESPN, Fox, they now will promote touts, and so they're giving an air of legitimacy to it. Like the touts, differentiating between sharp sports betting and honest tout service versus the not honest ones. You would have guys at, you have the TV on Saturday morning before college football, and there's these guys screaming at the TV, I have 78% winnings, and I have a lock pick for you to buy. I have inside info. Guys screaming at the TV.
Yeah.
You don't have to be that bright to realize that they don't know what they're talking about. But if you're a recreational sports bettor or someone casually interested in gambling, and ESPN or Fox are telling you about, gambling expert Philly Godfather, gambling expert Kelly in Vegas with their input, those being legitimate media outfits, that gives it an air of legitimacy. The Darren Rovell tweeted a month or two ago without any hint of sarcasm. This was a legitimate tweet of his. He said it's been 30 years since ESPN stopped airing tout ads. Well, all right, I guess, but when you have RJ Bell on here, gambling expert from pregame.com, how's that not a tout ad? He's advertising his tout service. You're not saying, buy these picks, but, there's another guy, Jason R. McIntyre, who's someone I detest both professionally and personally, who's publishing articles calling RJ a gambling expert. And you tell him, well, why are you promoting this guy? Oh, I'm not promoting him. I'm not telling anybody about picks. Well, you're calling him a gambling expert.
I saw Vegas Watch's post about that with his tweets of the year, where he had like the 7 or 8 tweets.
Right. Yeah. Thanks for the input, RJ. Great insight as always. I mean, a lot of these guys I didn't even know of, and I just happen to see a tweet and I reply, and they attack me and block me. It's really hilarious. I get, what's my motive? To be honest, I find this hilarious. People have the idea that I'm, sitting here, throwing stuff at my monitor, and I can't believe these touts. I find it hilarious, like how they're, the ability they have to deflect and dodge and to just, make shit up. It really is funny.
Yeah.
This McIntyre guy was congratulating Kelly in Vegas, who's a clueless tout, for going 14-1 at one point in the Hilton contest and winning this mini contest. And when I'm like, she's an idiot tout. Gave examples of the horrible advice she gives, and McIntyre's like, oh, well, I find it funny that a so-called advantage player like you never posts picks, but, you mock anyone who does. I don't mock people for posting picks. It's very rare that I criticize someone who isn't selling something and selling in a false manner. But that's how, these media people want to spin it. They'll either spin it, you hate touts, and no, it's not the touting, it's the misrepresentation, or they'll spin it, you mock anyone who posts picks. So,
Do you think the use of this social media we use, Twitter, helps at all, like with the deception part? Like I know you're talking about the ESPN and Fox Sports. Do you think that it makes it any easier for people to do it on Twitter, or do you think that people's BS radars are going up at all any more than they would normally be?
Yeah, it's hard to say. When someone has one of these crappy touts on a radio show, TV, whatever the forum, if I, send them a link to, say, the Vegas Watch series or something else, the vast majority of the time, I and other people do the same thing, pointing this out, either get ignored, get mocked, you're jealous of their success. So from the media perspective, it seems like there's they don't care. All they care about is promoting these people and getting their cut. Be it either they have if these touts are paying them or they get advertising money from the tout being on, whatever. But on the other hand, I don't have a lot of sympathy for someone who's buying these picks and isn't bothering to do any research. Like if they're buying a pick just because someone is on a 10-2 run, I don't care. They're going to lose their money anyway. So probably one of the funniest examples I can give about that is on Fezzik's old board. There's an imposter. There's a fake Steve Fezzik. He didn't advertise. Steve never bought SteveFezzik.com. So there's an imposter Fezzik selling picks as SteveFezzik.com.
And you have no idea who that is, by the way?
No, I absolutely no idea. Okay. And I don't even think that person does anything other than run the website. I've never seen fake Steve Fezzik on the forum or anything. Okay. But someone on Fezzik's forum mentioned a Fezzik pick, and people are like, oh, no, that wasn't really Fezzik. That's the fake Fezzik. He's like, oh, well, he's 10-4 in the last 2 weeks, so that's fine. I'm going to keep buying him. Like, this guy literally didn't even care that he's buying from a fake Fezzik. It's just because he was doing well. And so that kind of person, all right, so if these touts are advertising them on social media, whatever, they're going to lose either way. But for the kind of person who is interested in learning the way I did, at least if they have access to someone like me saying, hey, this person is not knowledgeable. And I've met a handful of people who thanked me for pointing out to these guys and giving out bad advice, and so from that perspective, if that 2% of people are really interested in learning, and the other 98% are lazy and just want to buy a winner, well, I don't care about that 98%. They're lazy; they're going to lose anyway, and by losing, the money goes into the square money in the pool. But hey, for the 2% that might get pointed in the right direction, if they're willing to put the time in, hey, I'm happy to help. People helped me over the years, so I'm happy to help that person.
Okay, so I assume that like before Twitter, you probably were you doing this on forums instead of Twitter, where you might have been like, hey, you're an idiot, you shouldn't be going to this guy, or
yeah, I mean the forums I posted on that Sharp Sports Betting, that forum. Fezzik's old forum, Fezzik's Place. There's a forum called EOG. Some friends of mine run a forum called Roughing the Punter that I post to. And I never really seeked out these touts, but if someone asks, hey, do you know about this person? Does anyone know about this person? Are they legitimate? And you can often, I've been around a long time, I can often tell when someone is full of crap. If you look at their record and their grading versus lines, if they are using lines from a casino that's closed for the night. They're using lines from Bodog, SIA, very square books that are very quick to beat winning bettors. That is a record that no subscriber could duplicate, because if you're betting NFL team plus 3.5 on Bodog when the line everywhere else is plus 3, they're going to switch you to another line set very quickly, and then once you keep winning, they're going to kick you out. So you can tell pretty quickly that the records are fake if that's the case. And then also, a lot of these, I could probably do an entire podcast just making fun of some of these idiotic things these touts say, and I can figure out that, there's no way that they win with, saying something like that.
Yeah, and we'll get into quite a bit of that shortly, because you did a good job of, while I was at work, I saw you on the Google document, I saw typing, I was like,
you can see as the words are coming,
pretty much
hanging on the keyboard.
That's the great thing about Google Documents. Right. I think you might have been one of the first people that I actually shared and let edit the outline. So I was like, I'm kind of bored at work, and I see like this little flickering icon, like, what is Mugu gonna say about some examples here? But I know. We were talking a little bit. Well, I guess we haven't really touched base on like if there's any touts that you would even remotely promote, and if so, like, you were talking about your initial experience. Is there certain traits or certain touts that you would even recommend? Like, obviously you probably don't want to go out of your way to like just like, hey, go to this guy, but like anything that sticks out to you with like what you would want in a tout.
Yeah, there are a couple guys I know of. I mean, the most well-known ones are probably Right Angle Sports and Dr. Bob. They've gotten a fair bit of mainstream media attention. And I know of a couple people from Right Angle Sports has a forum, Betting Talk. And I know some guys that post on that forum. There's a guy, Stevie Y Sports. There's another guy, ProCap Sports. Another guy, Dr. H Sports. And they're all posters that forum. They run services. And basically there may be others that I'm either not thinking off the top of my head or I just don't know about. But what those 5 services all have in common is when you go to their site, they have all the records there, and they grade the lines versus legitimate, widely available lines. Now, when you are following, all those services are well known and have done well. So, like if you're trying to bet a right angle play, that line's going to move very quickly.
Yeah.
But that's not his fault.
Yeah,
I mean, the line.
Yeah, I noticed that when I was following him, I don't know, I forget if I unfollowed him or not for some reason, but yeah, I did notice that like when he posted something, and like I said, I had no idea. I have no idea, if he's just betting a really good line or if he has that much influence. That's something I really don't know.
Right. Now, he does have a lot of influence, as do some of these other guys, because if you have a legitimate record that you've been picking 54, 55, 56%, whatever it turns out to be, I can't remember off the top of my head, but like Dr. Bob, him, and some of these other guys, people that are knowledgeable are going to bet money on that. So you can look up on a line history and see at the time the play was released, and then notice RAS might release at 11:30 and 13 seconds, and then maybe, I don't know, 9, 12 seconds later, whatever Pinnacle move, bookmaker moves, blah, 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 you'll see it across the screen. But that's the difference between a lot of these fraud touts, like Philly Godfather is famous for this. He will release a play after the line is moved and say, oh, well, my crew of people, the big syndicate money is on this. But, he's obviously full of shit because, these people, if he was actually betting that much, he wouldn't need to be selling picks for, $3 a day or whatever he's selling. But he's grading versus a stale line. And a lot of the touts do that. They'll use a line that moved already or a casino that's closed for the night. Most sportsbooks close overnight, so they can use the stale line from before the sportsbook closed, whatever. Whereas Right Angle and these other services, when they release the play, the line is there. So that's the difference. Now, whether or not if you would actually want to purchase these picks, it would depend on a lot of different things. Number one, can you get their lines? If you're not going to be able to get that bet in that quickly, or if your sportsbook might cut you off for betting steam because the line moves, or if you aren't betting a large enough amount to justify the service costs. Like I remember on RAS's forum a while back, some guy said, I bet $50 a game. And I don't know what the service costs, but let's say $1,500. I think that was right. So he's already putting himself 30 units in the hole. Like that, a $50 bettor is not the kind of person who should be buying an expensive service.
Right. Yeah.
And I'll get people telling me, they're buying, a Monday night pick from some pregame guy. Well, okay, who is legit? And I'll point these guys out. Oh, well, their service is expensive. It's $700, it's $1,500, it's $2,000. Well, they're not going to, give that information away that much more cheaply. There's a reason why it's expensive. And one other point that I didn't really mention, but if you were buying these individual picks like these touts sell, even if these touts were winners, you're still not going to make money buying a pick for $25 because you're just paying too much for the pick. Simple example, let's say someone's picking 54% and you're laying minus 110. 54% is extremely good. But if you're paying, and let's say you're betting $500, that's a decent sized bet. But if you're paying $25 for the pick, instead of now risking $550 to win $500, you're now risking $575 to win $475 because you're always going to be paying that $25.
Sure.
So even at 54%, I think when I did the math, your overall loss is going to be about $8. So even a 54% tout, which that's great, paying that $25 for a pick, you're still going to lose. So the other difference, these, if let's say you ask RAS, say, Edward, I'm betting $50 a game. Should I buy your service? I'm sure he would flat out tell you, like, you're probably not betting enough. Or on his forum, someone will tell you that. And his forum, again, is largely uncensored. So, you're allowed to, if someone told someone, yeah, don't buy his service if you're only betting $50 a game, $100 a game, $200 a game, whatever, that open exchange is allowed. So, yeah, so I mean, at a basic level, the only complaint I have about most of these trapping tout services is they don't make long-term records available, and they don't have picks graded versus widely available lines, and that's it. But they act like, oh, you hate pick sellers, or
Well, yeah, and I mean the transparency thing makes me laugh because if it was transparent, you would think it's really not that difficult to make like a Google document and have like update the Excel sheet,
Yeah, I mean, you could have your picks,
if you really if you
timestamp somewhere,
Yeah, something. Yeah, the timestamp's obviously a big thing because like you were mentioning, if you're saying you bet at the casino at 1:53
Right.
a.m. when the casino is obviously not open, then you're obviously full of shit. And maybe you could correct me. I don't live in Vegas, so I don't know when they have I know some of these books have apps. Are you even allowed to bet on the app when the book is closed, or I don't even...
I was asking about that. The apps, they treat the apps a lot different than they treat in-person bets, whereas it's much more difficult to get a bet approved on the app, and they will most of these apps will eventually they'll boot a winning player and make you come in person to bet.
Okay.
I asked if they were approving overnight because Stations is a very square book. I don't know him personally, but a friend of a friend, a guy won about $30,000 in 6 months. So, nice money, but not like he's breaking the bank as far as the casino is concerned. And Stations just flat out booted him from being able to bet, period. Bet in person, bet anywhere. Stations is also big on if they figure out you're winning, they will only let you bet once a day. So if you want to bet baseball and a full card, you can only come in once, place all your bets, then you're done for the day. Because they don't want people picking off, when they have a good line, when they have a half point better than anywhere else. And now their app said that they approved, you can bet 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so I asked people, and no one was really sure because most people I know that win can't use those apps. And they thought that maybe they might take small bets, like a $50 bet or a $100 bet, something like that, because they're not going to get crushed. So maybe that's how they work.
Sure.
But
yeah, and I only thought about that because a few pods ago I had a guy who lives in Vegas, Slam Deal. He was on the pod and he was mentioning apps, and I just thought of that now because that's something I don't even think about. Obviously you would think that they would mention that if they were actually grading it against, oh yeah, I actually bet on the app, but I doubt it's that. I'm trying to give them legitimacy or something that they don't deserve, but
yeah, they aren't. None of these sites care. I mean, they just want to have the best lines possible. They'll use lines, like I said, Bodog and Sports Interaction. That's another book where once you win a fair bit there, not even that large,
sure,
they will throw you out. So you just can't duplicate that record. And they're also like the one site, Vegas Insider. When I was looking at Dave Koken's record, they were using the best line out of 40 different sports books. Sometimes closed for the night, some square books, and sometimes a game might be off the board. Like if there's an injury, a line feed will sometimes keep a line showing as active if there's been a pitching change in a baseball game or an injury in a basketball game or something like that, where it will appear like you can still bet that line, but that isn't really available to bet. It's just still on the screen.
Sure.
But the tout site will, there you go. So, yeah.
Well, let's go into some of the what I saw you writing today while I was working. The section we have about dispelling some tout promoted myths, because I know this seemed to be a passionate thing based on the keystrokes I saw you typing on the keyboard there. But you have about 5 examples. So however you care to break that down. I know that this is a thing that this is probably a lot of their selling points that you're about to crush, and however you care to present it.
Yeah, I guess just some general concepts, and this wasn't anything I thought too hard about, just off the top of my head. I already mentioned the fixed games, so that we already went through. I do believe certain games are fixed. I mean, there's evidence of it, but not nearly to the extent that the touts would like you to believe. I mean, and also, just as an aside, the people that act like legalized gambling will encourage fixed games, I believe that it's exactly the opposite. By having gambling in a legal environment where you can see how all the lines are moving, if there's a suspicious line move where suddenly, this game moved 6 points for not much of a reason, well, then maybe look into it. Whereas if people are betting not through legal channels, how do you necessarily know where the money's coming from? But that aside, I guess the most obvious example I can give is the tout myth of money management. Todd Furman is one of my favorite targets because he's not only clueless, he's also an asshole. So I can criticize him both personally and professionally. I didn't even know this guy. It's kind of a funny story. I didn't know this guy from Adam. And a blogger asked him about one of his articles where he talked about a college football game that the night before the game, Friday night, the Westgate moved their line all of a sudden from -13 to -8. And he said, oh, well, this was because the pro bettors capitalized on some misperception of the teams. And this blogger asked me, hey, did that line move actually happen? So I looked it up, and the idea of a line moving from -13 to -8 literally all at once is very suspicious because that kind of thing never happens. Even if there was an injury, which wasn't the case here, they would take the game off the board first, and then they would put it back on. They wouldn't just decide, okay, we're going to move -13 to -8, in 2 seconds later. And he also claimed that Westgate kept that line at -8 when offshore books had the line at like +11, +11.5, whatever, until kickoff. That's entirely unbelievable because if Westgate has -8 when you can easily bet +11 or whatever, Pinnacle, Chris, etc., people are just going to bet the middle. I mean, I don't even know how much I would, I'd have to do the math, but I would happily bet, hand over fist betting that -8 because then I could just come back and bet +11. And I'm only, risking the juice of it maybe hitting 9 or 10 to hit the middle or 8 or 11 to get a push on one side or one the other.
Sure.
So anyway, so I said to the blogger, yeah, this line move never happened. Here's Westgate's line history. It was just, bounced around 13, 12, 13, whatever. It turns out that whatever line feed Furman was using was incorrect. I think they were probably getting the first half line.
Okay.
And so the blogger says to Todd, hey, this guy says this line move didn't happen. And next thing I noticed, Todd blocked me on Twitter. I didn't even talk to the guy. I didn't even tweet at him. I wasn't rude about it. But it's that important to someone like him to seem correct that if you give information correct again, he would rather block you and tune you out as opposed to actually listening. So anyway, back to the money management issue before I start training. This is.
By the way, if you've listened to other podcasts, whoever it might be, somebody was tweeting me. By the way, you're not going to get a word in with this podcast. Like, well, I've had Alan Boston on.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you've had Alan Boston 3 times, me ranting. I am minor leagues compared to his ability to rant.
Oh yeah, so don't mind me. I'm just sitting back drinking some beer and enjoying the rants here. So sorry to interrupt, but yeah, feel free to rant away. I'm listening and I'm drinking, so I'm doing both equally, I think. So
if I told you what I was drinking right now, it would be embarrassing to my image of someone that drinks good beer. But no, I am drinking a 25-ounce can of Bud Ice because on my way home I happened to walk by a deli that did not have good beer. So,
okay. Yeah,
it's Bud Ice for me tonight.
I stopped by Walgreens for me and my fiance's dinner for the night. Some Walgreens honey wings, and some local beer a little crazy. I think I drank this last week on the pod. So, if you're ever in Chicago, I don't know if you've gone to Chicago recently, but Revolution's a good brewery that I like.
Yeah, I have a few friends that live there. It's actually probably the only big city on the East Coast that I've never actually been to.
Oh, and Chicago's considered East Coast to you.
Well, East Coast.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've been drinking. I meant east of the Mississippi. I mean, I've been to pretty much every other East Coast. Well, that's a tout promoted myth.
Say, man, yeah.
East of the Mississippi. Well, I guess I haven't been to like Minneapolis or something. I've been pretty much up and down the Eastern Seaboard.
Okay. Fair enough.
And now, you get me into some beer now, I'm losing my train of thought.
That's fine, yeah.
I'm telling tout promoted myths about Chicago as an East Coast city.
Yeah, we can sell these stories for
really
for a good penny here. So
I'm thinking about selling beachfront property in Chicago, making the same money these touts do. All right, money management. Get myself that one. Right?
So about that, yeah.
Yeah, that's the actual gambling talk. So Furman writes this article about how money management is the most important trait to have as a gambler, and says I suggest people divide their bankroll into 40 parts and bet 2.5% of bank per play, and that's the Kelly criteria. Like that isn't it, and there you'll see all sorts of these money management claptrap things going around that touts will write, and other tout sympathizers, blah blah blah. Money management as far as betting at its core is incredibly simple. You figure out your edge and you bet in proportion to your edge. So if you know that this bet has odds of X and it has a Y percent of winning, you bet with the Kelly criterion. Bet whatever percentage you're comfortable with doing. For a smaller bankroll, maybe bet half Kelly. For a larger, maybe quarter Kelly, even smaller than that, whatever. But trying to figure out how much to bet in proportion to your bankroll is simple. The difficult part is finding a plus EV bet and estimating your edge. That's the hard part. But the touts don't tell you that. They try to make it, and so a lot of losing gamblers just want an ability to rationalize why they lose. And I think that's why some people buy tout picks, because if the pick loses, it's not my fault. The tout gave it to me. And I think this money management claptrap is the same idea. People can figure, I made good bets. My problem is just I don't bet enough on my good bets, and I bet too little on my not so good bets. But again, even if that was the case, it isn't an issue of money management. It's an issue of not estimating your edge correctly. And I mean, I've been seeing these goofy money management articles for the whole time I've been doing this for 20 years. People, money management is the most important thing as a sports bettor. No, it isn't. It's making positive expectation bets. The rest kind of falls in once you do that.
That makes sense. And even when I first started doing this podcast, I probably would have thought that money management was probably like the number one thing but even then, I don't know. I don't even really know if people have like a quote unquote bankroll. Like everyone always says, like, you need your bankroll should be like 100 units or like I don't know what the fuck that means. Like I don't know. I don't feel like people have a true bankroll to begin with when they're doing this.
Right. I mean, for a recreational bettor, the idea of a bankroll is kind of useless because you don't even necessarily know if you have an edge in the first place. But if even for, say, an advantage player, someone who does win, let's say they have a job and they also bet on the side and they're a little better. Well, the idea of a bankroll isn't as important if you have a salary and you have something that's replenishing it. And so from that perspective, bankroll management, and this, talking about something different from money management, but, in terms of percentage of your bankroll. But it's a lot more important to worry about, right, what is your bankroll if you don't have an easy way to replenish it. But if you're collecting a paycheck, well, that's an easy way to replenish it. So if I had $100,000 in savings and that's my bankroll, and I didn't have a job, I would be much more conservative than if I had a well-paying job that I can then replenish the bankroll with.
Sure. No, that makes perfect sense. So you have some other examples that that touts use to promote their.
Yeah, just real quick. I mean, this is known. I mean, this is kind of obvious, but touts talk about hot streaks. Dave Koken, who's a losing baseball bettor over salesman, his overall record is a negative. Was recently tweeting about a Rockies hitter, DJ LeMahieu, who was a tough out, and he's a pretty poor hitter, but he had started the year 12-22 or something. So oh well, he's hot. Like, there's plenty of evidence in. I didn't mention this earlier, but most of my background in betting, as far as what people call strict handicapping, is from baseball.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't think I don't know if you addressed like what sports you actually bet.
Yeah, I'm pretty shitty at promoting myself, but I mean I will bet anything,
Okay.
but there's a difference, and this is something I might get into later, or I'm sure I will. There's a difference between being a bettor and a handicapper. And actually, I guess, all right, so this is, I guess, a tout promoted bet. Since the touts are selling picks as handicappers, they make it sound like handicapping is the most important thing. And people often refer to me as a quote capper. And, I'll get oh, wait. Hello? Okay, something was just.
I accidentally,
okay.
I unplugged, my mic got unplugged for a second there.
So. Okay, all right, that's fine. So, I will sometimes have people on Twitter asking me, "Oh, do you have a pick in the NBA game tonight?" And I do well in the NBA betting, but I don't know how to handicap it. When I'm betting, I'm just looking for good lines. I might, I know how much each half point is worth. Some sportsbook will give you at particular times, you might get a free half point on your bet. You can bet the quarter, you can bet the first half, you can bet the game. So sometimes you might notice a book that didn't adjust their first half line when they moved their full game line. So you can bet the first half line. You can bet props. Now, the limit on props tend to be small, but, if I see a prop I can bet for $500 that, I know that's a good bet. And then maybe I can bet it a few places, not like, I don't make huge money betting the NBA, but this is the easiest example I can give because I don't even know much about the sport.
Sure.
But, I find a $500 bet here, I find a $1,000 bet there, and it's like I'm putting a ton of time into it. I'm just looking for good numbers. So that is the difference of being a bettor versus being a handicapper. So if someone, asks me about, can they, do I have a pick they can follow? Well, no, I don't, because the number I got, you're not going to be able to get. So my bet that's probably a 53% bet, if you tried to follow it, you would probably only be able to get a half point worse, and that's a 51% bet, so that's no good.
Sure.
But the touts like to focus on handicapping as opposed to actually instructing you how to bet and how to get the best number, or just to try to get the best number, because that's what they're trying to sell you. They're selling their expertise as handicappers. The two things I had on there was talking about riding hot streaks. You have the tout, hey, I'm on my 11-2 run, buy my picks. So that kind of logic also correlates to a handicapper like Dave Koken saying, well, this baseball player is hot. Actually, one thing people often ask about books they should read related to sports betting, and there really aren't that many, for the obvious reason being that you can only say so much as a winning bettor without hurting the bottom line. Like, there are a lot of tricks I know about, things that aren't reflected in the market necessarily, that I'm not at liberty to say, because number one, often I heard this from somebody else who would kill me if I'm blabbing about it all over the internet. But also, I can't do that without hurting my bottom line.
Sure.
I know
that makes perfect sense. No, I mean, and I get it. I know it sounds sad to say, and like it wasn't really something I gave much thought to, like, many months ago. But like, I was like, wait a minute, there's really no fucking incentive for.
Right, no, there is.
So for a good bettor to share what they know, because if they did, then, I mean, yeah, you're gonna hurt if you're doing this professionally, you're gonna hurt your bottom line.
Yeah, like the touts I mentioned earlier that have positive records and display those records, they, with almost no exceptions, they don't give you a write-up. Like, they're not explaining to you why they're betting this, because, and if Right Angle Sports starts telling you, why he's betting a particular college basketball total. Like maybe this one coach is going to be playing at a lower tempo this year. Well, then people will start betting before he's able to bet himself, before he's able to release his play.
Sure.
So Dr. Bob, I don't even know if he still does this, but for a while he would have write-ups where he said, this play fits a particular subset, that is 190 and 120 all time. Well, if someone figures out how to reverse engineer that play, they can then bet it themselves before Dr. Bob can release the play.
Sure.
And I'm almost certain that Dr. Bob's win rate isn't as good as it was a while back. Like if you look at, he still wins, but not nearly the rate he used to. And I would not be shocked at all, and this is what I think is the case, that people figure out how Dr. Bob's methods work, and then they can beat him to the punch, which is something you always have to worry about. Even not as someone giving picks publicly. I was trying to think of a simple example of, and there are tons of them, of things that I knew that used to work that no longer work because they're now more well known. And a real simple example from the NFL: if you have two games in the NFL with the same side and the same spread and the same total, and one game is close at halftime, the other game, say, with 3-point favorites leading 31-0, the second half total will now be a good bit lower in the game that's 31-0 as opposed to the game that's close, because the team leading is not incentivized to pass the ball or even score. All they want to do is eat clock. So they will be running the ball more than if the game was close. So if you would compare those two games, the second half total would be lower in the blowout. But like 15 years ago, 13 years ago, whatever, and I was starting betting, you would often see them not adjust correctly for the fact that it was a blowout. So I would bet pretty much every blowout, I would bet the second half under. And then eventually I would notice people doing the same thing because the line would move. And then people would talk about it on forums. Someone write an article, hey, in a game that has a margin of 17 or more at halftime, the under in the last whatever years is, winning 63% of the time, whatever might have happened.
Yeah.
So,
I remember having that same philosophy, and I don't remember actually seeing stats about it, but it made sense logically. I remember a Brady versus the Titans game where the Patriots were up like 38-0 at the half against the Titans. They ended up winning like 55-0, and I bet like the under, which second half was like 19.5 or something.
Right, and the game total might have been like 42 or something.
Yeah, something like that, because the weather was bad, but like the Patriots just fucking destroyed. So.
And there's certainly great value to be found in second half lines, but that was the kind of angle where you could properly bet it blindly. And there are other examples. With baseball, with run lines, baseball you can bet the money line or a run line plus a run and a half. And for a while, it's home teams would not be adjusted correctly. And I think the reason why was because square bettors would be happy to take the -1.5 because they're not worried about, if you have a home team in baseball -1.5, once it gets to the ninth inning, you're kind of screwed. You're only going to win if there's a walk-off home run for multiple runs.
Right.
Whereas the away team can still score extra. So I think the market wasn't anything huge. Like you couldn't blindly win betting +1.5 run lines. But when betting baseball, I would say in the last year or two, as opposed to say 5 years ago, the ratio of the money lines I played versus run lines, I played a lot more +1.5 home teams 5 years ago, because I think that the market is now adjusted. And was it because people talked about it? Was it because just smart bettors learned and capitalized on it? I don't know exactly, but same kind of idea. The market will catch up to certain things.
Sure.
So the hot streaks, again, touts will talk about that. And a big thing, a big part of RJ Bell's business is tweeting out these ridiculous, non-predictive small sample trends because he knows people, eat that stuff up. I saw some trends I saw one of these pregame touts quoting yesterday or baseball were kind of hilarious. Like someone mentions, since September 11th of last year, Mets games are 13 overs and 0 unders. As an underdog, after they scored 3 runs or less the day before, and they won as a favorite. Like, how is that? That's not predictive. I mean, if you have all these different, if you want to break it down by how many teams, how many runs a team scored, and whether it this, whether it that, you could probably come up with literally hundreds of thousands of trends to try to data mine, from baseball. So if you have these 500,000 trends or whatever, eventually a few of them will be on a 12-0 run, a 13-0 run, a 16-2 run, whatever. And, the recreational bettors eat that up when they see touts promoting that. But, that kind of stuff isn't predictive. You need to, actually learn what's predictive and what isn't. And a lot of those goofy trends just don't even make logical sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, you have to look at these things like I don't know how somebody's performance on a Saturday is gonna, why does he perform bad on a Saturday? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why does it need to be broken down so much? Like, you're obviously picking at straws at that point. Like,
Right. I mean, there can be examples of, I guess the easiest way to describe it is you want to differentiate between a pattern and a trend. Like in the NFL, I'm guessing this is now pretty well baked into the line, but for a while, if teams that were off a blowout, like a team that lost by say 30 or more, betting them in the next game tended to do well. But that makes logical sense. Bettors are going to look at, if they lost 38-3, I'm not going to bet them. So the market would undervalue them. That makes perfect sense. As opposed to some of these goofier trends about, a team, 13 overs because they had 3 runs or less as an underdog. Like, I guess you could say, well, maybe that team, is going to be more focused after a loss. But the one I forgot to finish what I was saying about sports betting books. There's a really good baseball book that is simply just called The Book, and authors are Tom Tango, Mitchell Lickman, and I believe there's one other co-author name I can't remember. But as far as just a straight up baseball stat book, it's one of the best books I can recommend because it's not the focus isn't gambling, it's just a baseball stat book. But they mention in there how you can't really predict a hot baseball hitter. If you look at guys that are, hitting 500 over the last 7 days versus guys that are doing whatever over the last 7 days, there really isn't any difference going forward. They did find some minor correlations between people hitting poorly and, when they continue to hit poorly, but that little difference is probably just hitters that were injured, that are, since if you're not breaking down who's hurt and who isn't, you're going to get that noise in there. But, so anyone telling you that a baseball hitter is hot because they're 12-22 or whatever really doesn't know what they're talking about, and there's statistical evidence to, suggest that. So, but yeah, that book I mentioned is probably the one thing that anyone that is either a baseball fan or is a baseball bettor should definitely read.
Okay. Yeah, the only I think the only sports betting book you could say that I've actually read is the Joe Peta book. I don't even remember the name of it. That's how bad of a host I am. But I think you know which one I'm referencing.
I know of it. I haven't read it.
Okay.
Off the top of my head, even the only sports betting books I think I have read that are decent are that forum Sharp Sports Betting. There was a book to accompany it called Sharp Sports Betting that was good for what it was. Now it's 13 years old, so I'm not sure if the data might be out of date, but there's still some useful stuff in there. And there's another book by someone named King Yao, King Y-A-O, like Yao Ming, King Yao, who was a forum poster on that Sharp Sports Betting forum. And I'm actually forgetting the name of it, but I'm as bad of a guest as you are.
So we're all forgetting things here. And
I didn't do my research, but King Yao was a very intelligent poster on those forums, and the book was. So now again that book's also from maybe 7 or 8 years ago, so the data may be out of date. But even if the data's out of date, if they're teaching you about how to analyze data, you can always compile your own data and work from there. So and I mean if you're betting anything resembling reasonable money, if you're paying $20 for a book, you don't really need to learn very much from that book to make it worth the investment. I mean, I've read far more poker books than I have sports books, and yeah, some of the poker books suck, but whatever, it was $20. So.
All right, and the other one I had, you were mentioning Vegas being the center of the Sprats betting universe.
Yeah, I keep mispronouncing Sprats, calling it sports. Yeah. I'm bad. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, you're an idiot.
Right. All these touts. Look at how all these people have as their username. RJ in Vegas, Kelly in Vegas. Teddy Covers, this other guy. I have 17 years of Vegas experience, acting like being in Vegas is somehow, of course I know what's going on in sports betting because I'm in Vegas.
Yeah, something about the dry air makes you a better sports bettor.
Yeah, I mean, the Vegas really compared to offshore, the line I like to use is that Vegas is really a pimple on the ass of the sports betting world, because there are some good Vegas books, but the limits are always going to be lower than offshore. The guy I got a kick out of, this guy Matthew Holt, who's the VP of Canner. Now Canner is one of the better Vegas books. Canner, South Point, and the Westgate will at least take a decent sized bet, and they're tolerant of winning bettors to a large extent, but compared to these offshore books, they are still smaller potatoes. Canner is not putting out an MLB opener. They are waiting for Pinnacle and Chris to put out a number and let that number get bet, and then Canner puts out their number, which is fine. There are different levels of risk aversion for a book, so I don't have an object to that. But then this Canner guy will be, when he was on the Sloan panel, he's talking about, we take the biggest legal bets in the world. You can talk about these illegal books like Pinnacle and Chris. You didn't mention Pinnacle and Chris, but that was the implication there. But those books aren't illegal. They are licensed in their jurisdictions. Now, all right, it might be illegal for Americans to bet there, but that's not their fault. So for him to act like a big swinging dick when they're not putting up an opener and they're waiting for these offshore books to do it, But they're not really going to tell you that. These touts act like I'm in Vegas, so I must know what's going on in the betting world. Which you could easily be in a foreign country or somewhere else and being able to bet at larger limits in these Vegas.
Yeah, if I had more money, I could say, I'm the guy living under the train that has,
Yeah, if you have access to these offshore books, it's not like you're necessarily missing out compared to Vegas. But,
sure.
And the one other thing, I don't know if I mentioned this yet, but touts love talking about results-oriented analysis. And results-oriented analysis has to be one of the biggest. You can lump this in with mistakes that recreational bettors make, and also myth touts promote. When you see all right, that guy Teddy Covers, who's been around for a while, and he was even mentioned in a movie as some sort of great sports bettor. Then you look up his records, and it was hilarious when I tried to add up his records since there's a poster, Computer Bob, it's spelled COMTR Bob, who posts on that Roughing the Punter forum. He's also on Twitter. He's tracked various touts for a very long time, and he's been tracking Sports Memo, which is a site where Teddy Covers sells picks since, I believe, February 2009. So I added up his records, and as of last month, he was negative 69.69 units. And I can't post that because people think I'm kidding. I think I'm making some goofy 69 joke.
Yeah.
I'm just so glad that he lost 13 more units last month. So now he's down 82 units, which is actually a more normal sounding number.
Yeah, because otherwise Kunk might.
Yeah, right. We'll start retweeting me every day at minus 69.69. So this guy has, if you've been following for that long, he's buried, plus the amount you paid him for his picks. But, he still talks about, I had a right side winner on this baseball game. there's 162 baseball games a year. I mean, there's no such thing in that area as, a right side because it won. Even if, a team wins 7-2, will that team win equal, if they play that game another 100 times, will they win that easily? I don't know. The most ridiculous, at least from the perspective of the result of the game, if a team wins easily, okay, I can at least understand why people think that matters. They don't differentiate between, any team can win any game. What matters is the probability of whether it'll happen. But what I really get a kick out of is people acting like the value of a particular half point matters on the game. I can just give you an example from earlier. I had the under today in the Phillies-Rockies game, and I believe the numbers I took were under 9.5 at like -105 and -108, I think I had. And the game was 7-3. Now, there were books, 5 Dimes would have it, Pinnacle would have it, where you could buy that half point. And I think I don't remember exactly the number I saw, but I think I might have seen something under 10 -130. Well, that would be paying too much, and it's not worth it. So I took under 9.5 at 105 and 108. But the tout type thing would be, if they gave you 10 -130, oh, well, I made the right decision because the game landed 10. So of course that was the right thing. I don't want to lose. My one target all the time, that idiot Kelly in Vegas, who's just utterly clueless, literally always buys half points whenever she can. And it has nothing to do with math. Whether or not to buy a half point has to do with the expected value of what that half point is worth. But she buys every half point she can because she doesn't want to lose. And there was some NFL game, I think it was the Packers-Cowboys, I can't even remember, that I think the line was 5.5, and the team won by 5. So she bought down from 5.5, 110 to -5, -1.
It was probably the playoff game.
Yeah, right. I don't even remember what team
were involved. Yeah.
But the NFL 5 is not worth very much. It's
right.
NFL point values you can now throw out the window because we have new kickoff, we have new extra point rules. So throw all your charts out the window for the time being. But whatever the 5 is worth, it's not nearly worth that much. It's probably -1, -5.5. -110 is probably like -5, -115 or something. It's not even close to being -120.
Sure. All right. I've been tweeting a little bit while you were talking here, and I think this is going to be the 2-part pod.
Right. Yeah.
So we'll break this off shortly for the second part for next week, but we'll continue with the tout industry a little bit, and we'll.
Yeah, actually, I guess that's a good place to break it off because we can go from the touts and then into how people actually win at this.
Sure. So the last 2 things we had here, we can go with the first one, and obviously with your analytical skills, or I should say censored analytical skills, where do you
star.
Yeah. Where do you see the tout industry headed in the next 5 or 10 years? Like, do you see people getting any smarter with what, like, how these forums and Twitter are promoting, like, or not promoting, but like how they're exposing some of these things? Do you see things getting any better? Do you see the frauds, shape shifting and kind of,
Yeah, I guess my guess is actually that I think it's gonna we're on a path that it's gonna continue to be a little scummier, in the sense that, like I said, ESPN and Fox and these are happy to promote these touts because it gets them people watching and they make money. The number of ways that these companies can make money off these crappy touts are very wide ranging. Real simple example I can give you is that a lot of businesses make money off of what's called affiliate links from sports books, where so you have an advertisement for a sports book somewhere and someone clicks on it, and when they sign up, there's a code that shows the sports book that they sign up via your site. When you lose betting there, the site that had the affiliate link, they make a profit. Someone I know from Twitter, I can't remember who it was, but was investigating Philly Godfather. And Philly Godfather has affiliate links on his site. And I think it was Bovada, but some sports book. His affiliate money, he made something like $15,000 just from his customers' losses by clicking on that link. And so if, someone like ESPN can make money off of customer losses, I'm sure they'll be happy to do it. I don't know a whole lot about daily fantasy sports other than I haven't really got into it, but just from what I see in passing. But ESPN a couple days ago now has a fantasy sports tout giving out, and they have, I believe they own part of DraftKings, or they have some connection to DraftKings.
There's money in exchanging hands somewhere, yeah.
Yeah.
So. And
so they have this woman giving out her daily fantasy picks, who is claiming that she cashes like 94% of the time on one site, 90% on the other, and her return on investment's 300%. I mean, I have a 12-inch penis and I have a threesome with hot blondes every night. That's about as believable. No one's returning 300% on ROI on a daily fantasy site. So the fact that they put this up on that they advertise this and have no problem doing so, knowing damn well it's fake. What does ESPN care? Like, does whatever person's in charge of, saying that she has 90% cashes and 300% ROI, do they even know what they're talking about? Did they investigate it? Probably not. They probably just, read whatever she said. And a lot of people seem to think that sports betting will be legal in more jurisdictions in the next 5-10 years. I mean, New Jersey's trying to get it. And I honestly don't know. I did a radio show a couple of years ago where I was asked this, since I'm not far from Jersey, and what I thought about that. And obviously I would be happy to have legalized sports betting, but I tend to be pessimistic about this because, the NFL and the major leagues seem to be opposed to it to a large extent. But then now again, I guess you have Adam Silver saying that he's, that he doesn't have a problem with legalized sports betting. So, I mean, obviously all the leagues care about is getting their cut. They don't.
Sure.
It's not a moral thing; it's a financial thing. So maybe if daily fantasy, catches on, then maybe they can ease people into thinking sports betting isn't a moral issue and legalize it. I don't know. But if sports betting does become legal in more jurisdictions, I think we're going to see, the mainstream media promoting more of these people now, as long as they get those cut. And, will people see through it? I don't know. Like I said, when I contact people and give very obvious examples of how R.J. Belloman's people are clueless, the response is usually negative. So, my guess is that I think we're going to see more calls being publicized by the media.
Show them fire. National airports, let me get them. National stadium, let me build them. President, now my sister, brother. I be the master. Ojibo man, I go chop your dollar. I go take your money disappear. 419 is just a game. You are the loser. I am the winner. The refinery, now me get them. The contract, now you I go give them. But you go pay me some more money, make I bring them. You be the mugu, I be the master. Now me be the master. Oh. I don't suffer, no be small. Upon say I get sense. Poverty no good at all, no. Now him make I join this business. 419 no be thief. It's just a game. dey play am. If anybody follow Mugu, my brother, I go chop am. National airport, na me get am. National stadium, na me build am. President, na my sister brother. You be the Mugu, I be the master. Oyibo man, I go chop your dollar. I go take your money disappear. 419 is just a game. You are the loser, I am the winner. The refinery, now me get them. The contract, now you I go give them. But you go pay me some more money, make I bring them. You be the Mugu, I be the master. Now me be the master. Oh. National airport, na me get them. National stadium, na me build them. President, na my sister brother. You be the Mugu, I be the master. Oyibo man, I go chop your dollar. I go take your money disappear. 419 is just a game. You are the loser, I am the winner. The refinery, now me get them. The contract, now you I go give them. But you go pay me some more money, make I bring them. You be the Mugu, I be the master. Now me be the master.